Lori here. I'm here today to do part one of my August reading wrap up. I'll be a little bit honest, this month so far did not go according to plan. I had a little bit of a struggle reading month at the start of the month. I went on a trip and I had a few blog tours that I just forgot that I was on. So I felt pressured to read some books and I didn't love them all. So it sort of put me in a little bit of a reading slump and I was really struggling with what I wanted to listen to. But now in my reading journey, I really am enjoying all the stuff that I'm reading, but I was struggling for about a week and a half, so let's get into it. Doing a little bit of an Olympic themed reading vlog for myself because the Olympics was on and I was watching a lot of the Olympics. So the first book I picked up was sort of like Japanese and Tokyo themed, but it's called From Little Tokyo with Love by Sarah Kuhn. This is also the author that wrote I Love You So Mochi, which I haven't actually read, but this one was really, really fun. You basically follow this girl named Rivka, and it's basically a loosely inspired Cinderella retelling. She lives with her aunts and her stepsisters, like her step cousins, I guess you could say. And she's always has one thought about her mother. But when a Hollywood actress she believes it could be her mother, they have like an unexpected encounter. She goes on an adventure with a hotshot young actor to kind of uncover what happened to her mother. And is this big Asian American, like the Asian American Julia Roberts, is this her actual mother? I thought this book was so fun and I really liked the Cinderella elements to it. It's been a bit since I've read like a modern day Cinderella retelling that I really enjoyed and I thought it was great. I really, really liked this one. I had to split up reading this one a little bit because I went on a trip, but I really thought it was fun. I also like it. It had a very important topic about being Japanese American. And, like, you don't always feel like you're Japanese American, or she didn't feel like it. And I just thought, it was set in Los Angeles. I really liked the relationship between the two lead characters. Also, like, in every, like, there was, like, a once upon a time. So there was, like, a little bit of, like, off-shot writing, which I really liked. I wound up giving this 4 stars for review, and I just like the Hollywood elements. I always love books about Hollywood. So this one was very, very fun, and I wound up giving it 4 stars for review. The next book has a little bit more to do with the Olympics, but that is Defending Taylor by Miranda Kennelly. This is I think this is the last book in her 100 Oaks series. So I like this one. It sort of was kind of like a bunch of different novels I've read in the past, but you basically follow this girl named Taylor, and she was going to this elite prep school. She was a soccer star, but when she winds up taking the blame for something her boyfriend did, she gets kicked out of like this elite prep school and has to go to a public school and join the soccer team. There's a blast from the past romance in this. I think it had a lot more to do with self-discovery than I was expecting and less to do with the sports side of it, which is why I was really reading it. But I have heard the other books in this series do dive in a little bit more to the sports elements. It reminded me a little bit of the basic plot of The Unexpected Everything because there is like a congressman element to it. I like the romance. I thought it was fun. It definitely does talk a lot about drugs because that was what she got kicked out of school for, and also the high pressure she was placed on. Wasn't the really biggest fan of her parents, but it was a fun read and I wound up giving it 3 stars for review. And I definitely do want to go back and read the other books. I have read Catching Jordan and I haven't got around to any of the other ones, but I like this. I enjoyed it. I think currently I still like her more, like the book she's coming out with nowadays, but in the future I would like to go back and read the rest of the series. I also did have a DNF this month as well, which I've been trying to do just because if I don't like a book, I don't want to force myself. But We Are the Wildcats by Siobhan Vivian. I got about maybe like 50% into this and none of the characters' point of views really captured me. But it basically follows these 6 diverse perspectives and they're about to make like a lacrosse team. But there was something was happening with the coach and the character voices were not distinct enough for me to follow and I wasn't enjoying it, so I wound up DNFing this one, but I did get it from ALA and I will probably pass it on to someone that I work with next time I see her. And then let's see, I think this is so the next book that I read was for a blog tour that I was on, and it is, let me get the title right, it is They met in a tavern. So here's a photo of that one that I was reading when I was on my trip, and I just felt so rushed because my date was like middle of the week. I think it was the day after my birthday. But I actually like the concept of this book, but it basically follows this bunch of characters who basically save the world. And then you jump forward like 10 years and see them as adults as they're dealing with the aftermaths of that. And when another villain returns, they are put in the crossfires again. I enjoyed all the characters' point of views. It reminded me of reading like a D&D campaign. Like that's basically what it reminded me of. And I did like all the characters. I thought it was very, very fun. It was what I wanted The Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth to be. But I really liked it. It was enjoyable. It was a fast-paced read. It was very, very action-adventure-y. There was a lot of diversity in the characters, which I liked. And you could see the characters were definitely older than something I would have necessarily read. Like, they were definitely, like, in their 20s or in their 30s. And I just enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book I've ever read, but it was really enjoyable. And it just, like, makes me want to play D&D again, because that was sort of the atmosphere of the book that I felt. But I did like the characters, and I thought that it was a super fun read. We also got a lot of different point of views, and it was enjoyable, so I liked it. I wound up giving this one 4 stars for review. And then the next book that I read was actually an audiobook that I finished listening to, and that is a reread for me, and that is The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Hennen. Here's a photo. Audiobook of this because I adored this book the last time I read it. It includes one of my most favorite tropes, but you basically follow this main character, and in the first page, her father is relieved to be dead, and she is basically going to be queen of this realm because her mother many, many years ago ran away, and they call her the runaway queen. So there's a lot of political intrigue trying to convince her to get married and do what like her advisors want her to do. But when one of the people that want to marry her kidnap her stable boy, who she's actually in love with, she has to go on an adventure to save him. I adored this book. I really like the main character, how strong-willed she is, and I just love this story. I love romances that have to do, like, in fantasy tropes that, like, have to do, like, the heroine know the love interest since they were kids. I'm a big fan of Anastasia and all those stories. So this is definitely one of my favorite tropes. I thought the world was really interesting. It reminded me a little bit of, like, not like Star Wars because it's set on Earth, but like the arid nature of a Star Wars climate, like the way that's, that Rey was set, like that arid nature, like Empire of the Sands or stuff like that, like a very, very arid climate. There was a lot of political intrigue in the story, and the ending was super surprising, so I do have to get around to reading the sequel. I hope to add that to one of my TBRs soon, but I loved it. Definitely super fun. I gave it 5 stars for my listen. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully I will finally get around to reading book 2 soon. It's a very, very quick read, but also just really unique. You never see that in a fantasy element, that trope. At least I don't. So if you have any fantasy recommendations where the main love interest is actually the person that she's known her whole life, I don't find that trope nearly enough, and it's one of my favorites, probably because it's not a very, very popular trope, but for me, I love it. But definitely really like this one, and was super happy that I finally got around to rereading it on Audible. And the next book that I wound up reading was another e-arc, which you'll see my review, I think, later this week, and it's called Burden Falls by Kat Ellis. Here's a photo. Like a Riverdale story. I've never watched Riverdale, but I do like mystery thriller type shows, so I was really excited for this one. But you basically follow this main character, and she is dealing with a lot. Her parents died in a car accident a year ago from like her family's like worst enemy. Something happens and they're in a car accident, and she winds up moving in with her uncle and his wife, and then they have to move out of their house, and the people that killed her parents or in the car accident with her parents move into her house. And there's just a lot of things that are happening that are starting to think that there might be a supernatural twist to this story. She winds up getting very, very close to a character that you're not expecting. There are murders in this story. I will admit, the murders in this story, and like it says in the prologue, like she's basically a suspect in one of the murders because she doesn't like the person who's killed. But the murders in this story were very, very predictable. Like, I could really anticipate who was going to die, but I thought the end was super surprising, and I like the characters. They weren't my favorite, but it was an enjoyable read. It was quick, very, very fast paced. I was surprised enough by the twist to consider reading another one of her books, but it didn't wow me. So I wound up giving this one like 3.75 stars for review. It sort of felt like I was watching like a teen reality show, and that was totally fine. I really liked it. Wasn't my favorite thriller I've ever read, but it was enjoyable, and I will definitely check out more by this author in the future. That sort of made me think that I need to sort of like read something, like kind of go off my TBR, because I was like so disheartened by everything I was reading. So I said, all right, let me pick up a 5-star prediction read that I had, and maybe that will do it. So I picked up Five Kingdoms Sky Raiders by Brandon Mull. This is the first book in his new fantasy series. This definitely has like a science fiction twist, and you follow this character named Cole, and he is trying to impress a girl on Halloween, but when they go into this haunted house, things are not as they seem, and they're basically sucked into this fantasy world where his friends are taken as captives and he is taken as captive, and they go on an adventure to try to get back to his friends, and it's a wild adventure, but I didn't feel really connected to any of the characters. There was a shocking twist at the very, very end with one of the characters that I really wasn't expecting. I definitely hope to like read the series eventually, but it didn't really capture me enough to read it right now. But it was a 5-star reproduction. I only gave it 3 stars, and this was sort of like where I was like, okay, I need to try to like find a book that I think I'm gonna love. And that is the last book you're going to see in this reading vlog. But I liked it. I think I still love his Fablehaven series more. I felt so much more connected to those characters. This book did have like a science fiction-y twist. And I thought like the twist towards the end was interesting, but it just wasn't my favorite. So I wound up only giving this one 3 stars. And then the last book that I read in this reading vlog, I just actually picked up the previous week because I saw a friend and she had an early copy of this. So I picked up As If on Cue by Marissa Cantor, and I really like this book. I am a theater teacher, and I love the theater so much. And since we've been living in a pandemic time, we haven't been able to do shows. This book totally took me out of my reading slump, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. So what this book is about is you follow Natalie and Reed, and they are enemies. Now, I sometimes struggle with enemies to lovers because if it's not done super well, I don't feel the buy-in for enemies to lovers. But this book, I think, did a really, really good job. So you basically have Reed, who's this concert level musician, and you have Natalie, who is basically works in the drama club, but her school's budget got cut. Everyone's budget got cut except for the band, so they lose their theater show for the year. So her and her best friend, they write this musical and try to convince like the academic board to let them do it, and hopefully that will help them get funding for next year. But when her and Reed do a prank war that goes horribly wrong, things don't go according to plan, and they're forced to work together to put up a musical that Natalie and her best friend wrote. And it was really enjoyable. I think that the pranking elements in this story was a lot more enjoyable than when I read We Meet at Midnight by Jessica Pennington. I thought there was realistic consequences. I also really liked the complicated family relationship that both Natalie and Reed had. Also, this is another book that really does focus on Jewish culture, which again, I really appreciated. There was a lot of topics in this book that were discussed, like family relationships, also the relationship Natalie had with her dad, because Natalie's dad is also Reed's coach or like tutor. It was great. I love the musical elements, and as somebody that has like done this, like when I was in high school, we put up a musical version of Alice in Wonderland. Now there is a musical version, but when I was in high school in like 2000, that didn't exist. 2004, 2005, that didn't exist. So we wrote our own, and I know how hard it is to get everyone to be on the same track and to write your own musical. It's incredibly challenging. And as a theater teacher, I also love the focus on cooperation in this novel and how important that was. And I would easily give this to my students to show how important cooperation was. There was also romance stuff in this, growing up, all the fun things. There was also a really interesting talk about is the art of like a valuable career path? And I love that conversation that Reed and Natalie had, and it was great. And I wound up giving this 5 stars for a review. Really, really loved it, and you guys should definitely check it out when it comes out in September. And I'm probably gonna do like a review for you guys when it does come out and talk about a couple of my other books that have to do with like theater that I really liked. But thank you guys for watching my wrap up. If I had to choose some favorites, I would definitely say As If on Cue, The Princess Will Always Save You, and from Little Tokyo with Love. Those are probably my favorites. And if I would say books that I wasn't the biggest fan of, definitely my DNF of We Are the Wildcats, and probably Five Kingdoms and Defending Taylor. I like them, they just weren't my favorite. I don't think I'll be keeping these. I'll probably be getting rid of most of them, but I like them. So let me know in the comments what are some books you have read recently, and I'll talk to you guys soon for my next video. Bye, friends.